Hi everyone, welcome to this second webinar in this series around Data Vault on Azure. I'm Julian Redmond. I lead the team at IRiS, and with me is my colleague, as per the last event, Alex Lay. G'day Alex, how you doing?
Hi there.
So basically this is the second in the series. The first one we focused on the value of the Azure platform and the sorts of things that you can do with that platform and Data Vault together as a business. But this one's the deeper dive. This is a bit more technical. We'll jump onto maybe the slides, Alex, and we can quickly talk through the agenda. So if you haven't seen the first one, it's probably worth going back and having a look because that'll talk about how we pull these sorts of platforms together and the sorts of things that we've seen people do with this platform and Data Vault together, of course. But today we're going to dive into the actual architecture. Alex is going to take us through a demo at the end there. So well, this is the agenda for today. Data Vault automation on Azure. Why would you do it? Then we're going to have a deeper dive into our IRiS tool. So IRiS is the Data Vault automation solution that we've been working on for many years, and we think it's a really good fit with Azure. And so then Alex is going to walk us through an end-to-end demo and show us all the lovely stuff. So you got anything to add, Alex?
No, that sounds good. Excited to get it going. Hopefully it all works today.
Yeah, great. All right, let's jump into it. So starting, I guess we'll talk a little bit about Data Vault on Azure. Really, we talked in the last session about some of the things you can achieve with that. But today specifically, I guess, to frame what we're going to show people, we're going to focus on why automate. So why would you automate Data Vault in Azure, Alex?
I think it's a good question. And look, I think Azure obviously offers a lot of really great tools and a lot of different services that really, as a analytics kind of data platform provider or service, you really want to kind of maximize. And what we really want to do is to use those tools together to build something and really kind of maximize what's available all in that same ecosystem that allows you to really build things quickly and, deliver value quickly. And I think one of the things that we're really interested in particular is to be able to really drive delivery of trusted data, right? What we want to do, and there's several ways of doing that, but the one that we're going to focus on, I guess, today is really the idea that we want to produce excellent code that's consistent, that's fulfilling and following a good recognized standard. And that allows us, and as I said this, I guess, previously, of those who work around data, we like patterns, right? We want to find patterns. If we can find a pattern, well, that gives us a reason to automate. And if we can automate, we can deliver quicker. And that's what we're trying to do here.
And I think it's, like obviously if you automate things, you don't have to do them manually, so they get done quicker and more consistently and all of those sorts of things. But I think that inherent ability to do it fast allows you to do it in smaller pieces as well. And so you can get very focused on a single use case and a single business outcome, and that might be just one answer that the business is looking for, and you can bring that data from your lake through to your lake house and deliver that really quickly because you're just automating the code, right? So I think that's really powerful, that it's the implication of being fast allows you to be more responsive to the business and therefore answer smaller, more urgent questions at the speed the business is expecting those answers.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on a good point there as well around business value. Sometimes delivering business value requires you to focus on the business data, the data at hand. Yeah. And if you're not spending half your time trying to code something up, your dev team isn't there cranking out code constantly with risks and inconsistencies, you're taking that part away and really giving you that extra time back to focus on the important part, and that's the data at hand.
And we're talking about code development, and automating that. But some of the nice things we've got with IRiS as well help you automate your testing and those other things. But that kind of leads me into, which I know what the next slide's about is, that there are automation solutions out there and they're not all the same. They don't go about it in the same way. And so let's maybe jump to that and get you to quickly, because we did talk about this at the end of the last webinar, but it certainly sets things up for today, is what are the things that you need to think about when you're choosing how you're going to go about automating your data vault?
No, absolutely. So I think the key one here is really, and we've probably all heard it all before, at the end of the day, an automation tool isn't going to fix your data for you. Garbage in, garbage out. And I think you need to understand that, which goes back to really why we want to automate and take time away from having to hand code your data and your outputs, and to focus back on the data itself. Spend the time getting that input right so you can get the output right. You also want to think about maybe not over automating too much. At the end of the day, you don't want to hide what's going on behind kind of all these weird black box tools. You want to know and fully understand exactly what your tool is doing. So when something does change, go wrong, you can quickly get in there and fix that. And also, you want some sort of flexibility to align with your tool. And as we'll probably talk about later on, things like Business Vault or any business rules you want to implement, you want to be relatively flexible with that, because that's going to be different at every project, every data domain that you have to deal with. So you want to be able to deal with that easily. And of course, a good one here is always the skills gap. You don't want to have to learn everything, like scrap what you learned before, start again, go from scratch, upskill totally. You want that bit to be short. You want that bit to be easy. You want, a tool that has a good community and a whole set of documentation and so forth behind it to really help you move along. And maybe just something that does something very simply and very easily right here, right now. And then you can bring your other skills around your previous experience with all these Azure tools together and really complement that, as opposed to, fighting between the two. So yeah, there are definitely a few challenges that we want to kind of highlight, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, look, that's obviously a bit of a recap on if you didn't watch the first webinar, but obviously if you joined us for the first webinar, you've seen this. So now we're going to jump into our IRiS solution. So what is it, and why did we build it? Why did we design it the way we did? So let me quickly run through this, because I'm actually really excited to get Alex to actually show you it rather than just talk about it. But essentially, the concept here is a platform augmentation. So we are enabling data vault automation within the Microsoft Azure environment. It has simple integration with not just the Microsoft tools, but with other third-party tools as well that you might want to bring to the picture. So the idea is that this fits into your existing architecture without disruption and just provides you with data vault automation. So if you want to use data vault as the approach for your lakehouse, then you can automate that. And it'll work with, so it's actually now on the Azure Marketplace, and it'll work with other tools that you might download from the Azure Marketplace. So modeling tools, you'll see an example later today of an example of a third-party modeling tool and how IRiS simply integrates the metadata from that tool to help automate that solution. So I guess we'll move along to the next slide. What is IRiS? So essentially, it is a data vault automation developers tool. So don't think of this as a platform. Think of it as a tool that you're adding to your platform to provide you with this. And our philosophy was that it needed to be easy to understand and easy to learn and help you with deploying data vault in the best possible way, with the simplest development process and the easiest to use UI that we could possibly imagine. So it's easy to grasp. It's absolutely a new benchmark as far as the simplicity of doing data vault. It's very easy to maintain obviously the tool's easy to maintain, but the code that it produces is easy to maintain. And as we already said, simple integration so that it's very flexible in the tools that it can work with. And so we'll jump to the next slide, I think, Alex, and push through this section so that everyone gets to see you showing them the tool. But it's built by Data Vault experts. So my team We provide Data Vault training and certification in the APAC region. All we do is Data Vault. We focus very heavily on it. We are thinking about it all the time. How do we train people? How do we enable people? How do we support customers using it? And so we've taken that approach and that years of trying to help people to do better Data Vaults, and we've built it into this tool. So, we focused on reducing the learning curve and just delivering, fast, consistent, reliable Data Vaults. So it's supported by the IRiS Knowledge Hub. It supports your governance and auditability and testing processes. And it is, as I said before, very simple UI. We'll probably talk a little bit more later on about the IRiS Knowledge Hub as we move on through this. So very briefly, we looked at this in the last webinar as well, so I won't spend too much time, but we are going to show you today some Microsoft tools, and then we're going to show you IRiS working and how it fits with those tools, and then how Microsoft can then take the code that IRiS automates and deliver that. So IRiS is essentially this center box, and it just requires a certain set of inputs, being some metadata around the source structure, your target model, and maybe some mapping. Not necessarily you have to have the mapping, but obviously if you do, that's a great thing. And what it gives you is your data warehouse or your data vault structure and all of the code you need to load that in your warehouse or your lakehouse, and then some operational components like scheduling wrappers and those sorts of things. So it is providing you with your code. It's not trying to compete with the capabilities of the Microsoft platform. It's just trying to augment them. And obviously, from a target perspective, if we're sitting in the Azure environment, we're supporting Synapse, but similarly, we're supporting Snowflake and Databricks on the Azure platform as well. So it's a way to just very easily bring that into an environment that you're already maybe have a lot of development in, a lot of skills, and maybe have already purchased licenses for. So we're not trying to replace anything. We're just trying to augment what you're currently doing. Anything to add there, Alex?
That sounds good. I don't want to say too much and spoil the demo. So
yeah, no, fair enough.
We'll let it.
I'll finish my spiel and then we'll let you go for it. So just moving on, the next slide talks a little bit about the IRiS Knowledge Hub. So this is essentially where we provide the free online training. So this comes with any subscription to IRiS. You get access to the full Knowledge Hub, and there's an online training course that'll teach you everything you need to know around building a data vault using IRiS. There's a playbook, so that's a reference guide that really supports the learning you get through doing Data Vault certification training, and reinforces that learning and really takes you through how to use IRiS to implement that training. There's tips and tricks. So as we come across things that we think are cool, nice, workaround or shortcut or some other tip or trick that goes into there. And so that's kind of an ever-growing list of things. We added another thing just last week. And then the IRiS download, obviously, that's where you can go and get it. So it's a really handy tool. There's also a forum there, so you can actually chat with our team or other users. It's really to support any developer who's tasked with implementing Data Vault and building Data Vault code within their organization. We're trying to support that person or those people, and give them all of the resources that they'll need to be successful in their role. And then I think just quickly from the last slide of mine, anyways, just the pricing. So it's a simple per user per month subscription. There's no minimum seat numbers. So you can reach out to us. You can talk to our partners. But it's a very simple pricing model, because this is the sort of thing that you might license only a few people in your organization with this capability, because it is only for a specific task around building your Data Vault. So that's that may be just a handful of people in your organization. So we've tried to simplify that and make it very easy to access. Obviously, we're happy to provide evaluation copies or free trials. So obviously, if you get to the end of this session today and you want to have a chat around how do you get your hands on IRiS, we can make that very, very easy for you. And as I said before, it's now on the marketplace as well, and it's on the marketplace currently as a listing, but it'll be fully transactionable on the marketplace pretty soon. So I think I'm through my section pretty quick, leaving as much time as I possibly can for you, Alex, to show everyone. So why don't you take it away?
Perfect. Thanks for that. The slides are jumping faster than I can speak at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a demo of IRiS, but where IRiS sits in terms of an end-to-end data delivery project. Obviously, it's going to be very high level. So, we are going to touch across some of the important aspects and resources that we can use within Azure to load up a Data Vault data warehouse within Synapse. We'll step through some of that, and if there are any questions, obviously we'll aim to answer those, but I'll try to talk to all the bits that are going on and show you where it is, but we probably won't dig super deep into everything specifically. I think that we'll see what the feedback is maybe, and we can look at building more sessions around some and deeper diving into more of the Azure/IRiS tooling together if we need to. But what I'm going to do first is kind of just remind everyone of the architecture, what we're going to be looking at today. And starting from the left, obviously we have our source data. For us today, we are going to have some files that we have landed into ADLS, into a Azure Data Lake. We are going to use Data Factory to extract those files from the Data Lake and load them into Azure Synapse Analytics. Sorry, and in particular, we're going to load it into a Synapse dedicated pool. Now, what I have in this diagram as well, coming out of the ingest part of Data Factory, is potentially a data store, a persistent staging that we see as optional, but we are noticing it to be quite handy in a lot of projects. What that really means is we can take data from source, move it into, maybe do some sort of work to it, especially around JSON files and so forth, and opening those complex nesting that you can find in JSON files out to more of a flat structure using Data Factory, and kind of land that into a good, clean, persistent staging. And then from there, we'd load that into the dedicated pool. So it's an option that we've kind of been using quite recently, and clients have been quite happy with it. But in our demo today, we've got some simple data. So we're going to go straight from source, use ADF, land it into the landing tables in the dedicated pool. From there, number 3 in our little green circles, we're going to populate our hubs, links, and satellites. What we'll use is, again, Data Factory to help orchestrate a bunch of what IRiS calls wrapper procedures, ingest procedures, and I'll show everybody that a little later on. But essentially what that will do is help to load data from landing through the various tables that IRiS requires and load our hubs, links, and satellites in the Vault schema. And then, of course, what would happen is you'd have some views that read those and publish those to your visualization tool, Power BI in this example. And of course, wrapped around all of that, we want to think about using some of the other key features in Azure. We want to do our DevOps through Azure DevOps, get some governance through Purview, make sure our secrets are all hidden away in Key Vault, and some cost management if we need to keep an eye on how our resources are, what they're costing us throughout our project. So we'll look at some of those as we go through the demo. But what I want to quickly do is talk about that little white box in the middle. And this basically is how data flows in the view of perspective of IRiS. What you need to do is get your source data into the landing table in the dedicated pool. IRiS sees the landing table as the start of its journey, even though obviously on a project it's much bigger than that. But what we want to do is get data into landing. Once it's in landing, we create a single landing table per source that we have and per source table. So a customer table from a certain system will land that in as one unit, one landing table for that customer in landing. And we'll do that for every single source. And then what we'll do is, as a part of IRiS, IRiS will generate all the required DDLs, all the tables that are needed for the dedicated pool, all the stored procedures that are required to move data from landing to load to stage to vault. IRiS does all of that for you, and we'll have a look at that in a second. And what will happen after that is all our hubs, our links, and our satellites will be all created under a vault schema. So when you're querying your vault, you want to specifically go to the vault schema. We just have some intermediary tables using the load and stage schema to help kind of work out some of the data vault and best practices around hashing and so forth, just a few staging tables to help things move along. And then, as I mentioned, we will have a wrapper proc, a kind of master orchestration proc per source table that will help load everything into Vault. And we'll talk to how we use Data Factory to kind of orchestrate the running of these wrapper ingest procedures, which takes us nicely on to a quick overview of what we're going to do with Data Factory. So what we have, and you know what I'm going to do, is I am going to use a pen here. I'm going to start by talking to the control table. What we want to do is build out a repeatable process that's metadata driven. So we start off with a control table that holds all these IRiS ingest procedures. It lists them all, it adds some extra data around maybe whether it's a raw vault or a business vault process. And what we do is we use Data Factory to orchestrate and execute a list of those procedures based on what's in our control table. And what we'll do is we'll loop through each one of those, but do it in a way that allows us to execute and load our data vault tables in parallel, because that's the important part here. That's the power of Vault. You want to do that load in parallel. And then what we're going to do is load all our hubs, links, and satellites, and you can schedule through Data Factory at what point in the day you want to run through these ingest procs. And we'll probably talk about that in a little bit more detail as we look at Data Factory a bit later on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do some modeling. Well, we're not going to do the modeling. We're going to create some code. We're going to load Synapse. We're going to use Data Factory. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to end this slideshow very quickly. And hopefully what you guys can see is Azure DevOps. And what I might do is just see if I can zoom in a little bit more for everyone, just in case. Okay, so where I'm starting here is, as you can see up on the top left, Azure DevOps. This is a set of DevOps tools that Azure provides for everyone. And in particular, what we are going to use, we're going to use two parts of it. We're going to use the Azure repos. It's the Git repository that allows us to store our code in source control. We're also going to look at Azure pipelines that helps us deploy our code to all the various database environments that we may need in a project, for example, development, UAT, and production. So what we do first is you've sat down with your project team, you've got a task to do, and I know what I'm going to be doing. So I've got my main branch where all my source code is stored. I create a feature branch, which today will be called demo and today's date. And in there will be a cut of the code. What we're going to do is go and create some IRiS code, put it into our feature branch, follow the general practices, the good practices of then doing a pull request back into our main code branch, and then we can trigger off a load of code into our various databases. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is next go to IRiS. And for those who may not be familiar with IRiS, what I'll do is just very quickly go through what we're looking at on screen here. So this is obviously the IRiS tool. And if we start at the bottom here, we have this concept of projects. Every time you build out some code, that is a single project. It allows you to kind of keep track of what you're doing and go back and fix things up as and when required. In the middle, of course, is our usual connectivity side of stuff, of what version of IRiS you're using, what target database we're looking at, and so forth. On the right, it's just our how you activate your licenses, how you get your trial up and going. We do have trial licenses available, so something if you're interested in, please get in touch. Up on the left-hand side, again, where we keep our projects, these will build up as you create more code. We have a settings page. You can see our target databases up at the top here. We are obviously going to be working with Synapse today, but we do have code that can be generated for Databricks and Snowflake on Azure. So from here is how we're going to start generating our code. What model will we be looking at? This is the one we're going to be working on. So this tool, it's called ERD Lab. It's a free online modeling tool. I just found a free one that I could get my hands on and had a little bit of a play around with it. What we're looking at, if I maybe go to the larger model, is something like this. Up on the top, these gray boxes is my source data. Underneath that, the blue boxes are my hubs, the red boxes are my link tables, and the yellow are my satellites. And you can see as I touch the various Data Vault objects, all the lines light up and so forth, and you can see where everything links together. This is the big overall model, but obviously on a project, you're starting off bit by bit, because what we really want you guys to do is to deliver value. That doesn't mean wait for everything to be done, work out what's important, find the table that does deliver that, get it to the user quickly, and just get things checked and used, looked at, confirmed, all that kind of stuff. So therefore for us today, this is our table. This is a service system table that will produce a link, 3 hubs, and a satellite. Now what ERD Studio does, once you've done your modeling, there is a function here to export the model. So if I do that,
it's probably worth mentioning that we expect people to do their modeling in whatever modeling tool they're comfortable with, and really the only requirement we need is that it can export its metadata, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, because IRiS has an expectation of metadata files. What we want to do is take the model and massage it into the formats that we're looking for. And in this example, this model has been exported. And what I've done down here is it's landed this model. Hopefully you guys can see it. This is the output of the model, and it's a whole bunch of SQL code. This is the source. What I have is I need certain files for IRiS. I need someone to help me kind of build the bit in the middle. And with a little bit of help from ChatGPT, what we have managed to do is create a little Python script that takes the ERD Lab Studio output right here, hit enter, and hopefully a little bit of help. What you'll see is, there we go, I believe this is the latest one. We have produced 3 Excel files which fill the IRiS requirement of, actually, let's open them up and have a little look at them so that I can kind of talk you through it very quickly of what IRiS needs. But as you can probably see in the naming, what we're looking at is 3 files specifically. We are looking for, open this one up behind, just a source metadata file. This is just our source table, and the table structures and the naming of columns behind it. So we need that one. Then we need our target. And this is basically the model that we just saw on ERD Lab. Just all the metadata behind that. Nice and easy. And then the final one is a mapping file that just maps our source to the target. Again, with all the mappings you can do on ERD Lab, this was an easy thing to pull out. So we need those 3. That's in essence our model. So let's minimize this and let's go to IRiS and start using IRiS. So what we're going to do is, let's go to get started, add new project. I am going to give it a name. This is the name of the source table that we're looking at. Add project. Let's go look for those files that we just created. Should be this one, I think. There we go. Firstly, take our source, import. Step 2, take the target. Let's go back, target, import that. And then at this point, you get a quick view of your model. Just worth having a quick look and checking that everything looks okay and as expected. I think, as I mentioned, there was a link. We had 3 hubs to look at and a satellite. Looks good. Step 3, add the mapping, which is the mapping between our source table and our target. Let's do that, make sure I got the right file. Import that, and at this point you can also do a little check to see if your source table and your target output has these nice black lines to map which column goes where. After that, we hit up our final step and we hit generate. 3 simple steps where all we're doing is hitting import of metadata. Then we generate the code. And as this ticks through all the steps that it requires to generate code, it's nicely stopped at a good one here, source and raw views. So what we have decided to do is, as part of outputting all the tables and all the stored procs to move data around, we've also included what we call a source on raw view. What that does is it takes your target hub and satellite and it builds a view that that takes the data there and regenerates or re-engineers, reverse engineers your source table. So you can look at your output and reverse engineer your input. Now, why do you want to do that? Well, one, it gives you a very, very quick way of checking that what you've done is correct. Because if you've gone from source to Vault, you should be able to go Vault back to source. And it gives you a really quick, simple way of testing. You could add a couple of records in source, generate your code, run your view, and you should literally have a view and your source table side by side, and they should look identical. Nice and easy. You can now test your code before you push it anywhere for anyone to test or into production. So that's super handy and definitely worth using. Oh, perfect. So as that's happened, we can see that all the steps are finished. Down on the bottom here, there's open linked generated files. And this takes us to a temporary directory where all the code is held. So in there, DDL, for example, under all the schemas, you'll have all the table code. If we go to stored procs, all the stored procs required to load all the tables, and everything's there. Perfect, ready to go. At this point, what you want to do is deploy this code locally, run it, test it, use your source on raw view, make sure everything looks good. At that point, when you're happy, we need to go back to source control. So if I was to assume very quickly that you're happy with everything, what I have here is Visual Studio. It's my kind of editing tool. And I've got my source repository linked to it. I've got my new files. I've dropped them into my repo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to commit my code. So I'm going to say new model ready to go. Let's commit that. Yep. Sync everything up. Great. Now everything's all synced up to my remote repository. And let's go back to it. And at this point, we have our feature branch, which has our new code in, the main branch, which has not got our new code in. What we need to do is do a pull request to get our feature branch code into, there it is there, our feature branch into our main branch. So what we'll do, I'd like to call, let's just call it merge so people can understand. Got a few files. We're going from the feature up at the top here into the main branch. Now, you probably want to add some approvals in here so you can get people to check your code for you. For the sake of the demo, we're just going to kind of push through that a little bit. Here we go. Let's create. There are no merge conflicts. What that means is that code is kind of different between one branch and the other, and you need to be aware of that. You might want to go have a look at it. again, these are all things, if you get approvers in there, they can have a quick check for you and kind of get you just to make sure everything looks right before you're moving things between environments and stages. So great. Let's say all looks good. Let's hit complete. And then we'll merge this into our main branch.
So those approval steps, Alex, that you're just talking about, is that something you can set up in DevOps?
Absolutely. So when you're set up within Azure and you've got Entra or Active Directory, if you're a little bit old school, you can add in all your users as approvers in this process. So maybe your team lead, your engineering lead, or maybe somebody in a totally different department, depending on how you want to set up your approvals. They'll get an email saying there's something for you to look at. You go look at it. You can see the list of changes. Quickly run your eye over it. Hit, yep, looks good. And kick off the next process.
Beautiful.
So at this point, we now have this main branch that has all the code we want in it. However, we don't have that code in our database. You don't want to manually go through and do any of this manually because, as we know, doing this manually just leads to potential errors. So let's, again, automate that. What we have is the ability to set up, and let me zoom in again on this one, hopefully, a little bit easy for everyone. We've got a couple of pipelines, Azure DevOps pipelines set up here. I've got one in particular that loads all the Data Vault code to the Synapse databases that we have. So what I'm going to do is going to run the pipeline as we have a little talk about it. So this is our pipeline, and this pipeline is created using YAML code. Won't go into what that is, but it's pretty easy. There's loads of templates online or even with Microsoft themselves that you can literally just copy and paste and just change your database names and so forth. And what we're looking at here is there are 3 boxes at the bottom, 3 stages or jobs. And the first job is to take the code, build it, make sure it works, create all the artifacts that are required to push them to Synapse. And then once that's complete, and we'll let that tick through, is we'll deploy to dev database somewhere. And then normally on a bigger project, you'll go from dev to UAT, from UAT to production. And again, for the sake of the demo, we're going to cut it a little short because we're arguably doing the same thing 3 times or 4 times, depending on what you're trying to do. So we're just going to push our code to a development database. And then once it's in the development database, we'll automatically trigger an approval stage so that nothing ever goes to production without someone knowing about it. Someone approving it and making sure just your whole process is taken care of. So as that runs through, well, there'll be an approval stage between development and production. We'll come back and look at that in a little bit, just to make sure everything's going through okay. But as that goes on, what I thought I might do is jump to the other Azure artifacts so we can have a little look at what's going on within Azure.
I had a couple of thoughts just before we jump, Alex, if that's all right. So I was just thinking, you've been talking about this. I guess one of the philosophies so a couple of philosophies that I've written down that I wanted to kind of mention. So we're trying to make sure that you're using as much of the inbuilt power of Azure as possible, right? So, if you can create the profiles, if you can create the approval steps, if you can do all the promotion of code, you can do all the extracts, and scheduling and the governance tools and all the things you're going to show. Our philosophy was, let's use as much of that as possible, and then just provide IRiS as that piece of the puzzle that doesn't exist as part of the standard Microsoft tool. So wherever possible, if Microsoft has a solution, we're trying to leverage that. Is that right?
Absolutely, and that's really, if we look at what we've spoken about, maybe over the last, I don't know how long I've been talking for now, let's call it half an hour. You can see we've just jumped from one Azure tool to another. You know what? We only spent a couple of minutes looking at the IRiS stuff, and even that was just importing metadata. So as you can see, things, once you set them all up, it's pretty smooth, pretty easy, and we're making the most of each one of those tools at every step and automating as much of that as possible.
And I think that leads into the next philosophy, was a single source at a time, which we kind of breezed past. But we've talked a lot about this with our partners and the customers that are using IRiS at the moment. Is the way you develop with IRiS is you bring a single source table into your data vault, whether that's a warehouse or a lakehouse, at a time, because we want people to focus on the business outcome and the use case rather than the bulk loading of data or bulk modeling of data. And I think it's worth us pointing that out, that we've kind of gone down a path to try and help people be agile and focus on business use cases rather than focus on, I want to load 300 tables from this one source because I want it all in,
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely right. And I think sometimes people focus too much on getting something perfect, and therefore, and I think the big hurdle there often is people are I need to get the whole model perfect first before I even look at the data in the vault. And I just don't think there's any need for that anymore. You roughly know what source tables you're going to need to build maybe a certain report. Just get those in, get those loaded, bring those tables in one at a time. And as people are looking at your data, you can go back to your model and look at what to add next, how that looks. And with the way the IRiS kind of allows you to generate code just by importing 3 simple files, fixing things up, it's pretty easy. You're not having to sit there, spend very long kind of recoding everything. Just put the new set of metadata files in, generate the new code.
And I think, that's been really validated by all of our partners who are Data Vault specialists, confirming as we do, that's how we try and lead people when they do a Data Vault project. We're really trying to bring all of the knowledge and expertise of how successful Data Vault projects have operated to this way of working. The same as Source on Raw. When I explained Source on Raw to our partners when we first started talking to them about working with us around IRiS, almost to a letter, everyone said, "Oh yeah, we do that. We do it. We don't call it Source on Raw. We call it some sort of reconciliation or whatever else." But it's really just trying to bring those little tricks to the or approaches to the well, it's in the playbook and it's in the way of working for IRiS.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you and I as consultants on projects, we can kind of do this quickly, we may as well share that knowledge with everyone, right? Enable everyone just to get their projects going and be a success.
Sorry to derail.
Oh no, that's okay. You actually got me at a good point here now. So as I mentioned earlier, in our deployment stage, we deployed to development. Before we go to production, got a little waiting blue box there, and of course I've set this up for myself, so I'm the approver. There's an email that's come out to me saying go approve it. So at this point, hit review. I could reject with a comment if I want, but I'm not going to. Gonna hit approve, and it does the next bit, and it now goes off and automatically deploys the code to our production database. Now, as that's ticking away, what I might do is go back to, I think, what you mentioned a moment ago and look at some of the kind of tools that we have available. In this setup, we will be using, as mentioned, Data Factory, Key Vault, and Purview. Look at governance. We'll have a look at that as well in a second. We've got a storage location, Synapse, and just to very kind of quickly have a look at a few of these things. We'll look at Data Factory in a second. Key Vault, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's just it's a safe. It's a safe that stores all the secrets, all your passwords, all the bits and pieces that you want to hide away. Sometimes it's even handy to put things that maybe might not be secrets, but it's like a central repository to be able to pull out things that are changing. So maybe like a database name but it's different between dev, UAT, and production. Store it in Key Vault and just go pull it out. So for example, here, then you have all these secrets. I've got let's try to control database password, my Data Vault database password. You just tell Key Vault, give me this value, and it'll go retrieve it and return it to you. And then you can go off and connect to whatever you need to. Pretty handy, absolutely worth using and should be using. And then actually, while I'm there, let's just, okay, it's gone to production. Perfect. At this point, let's jump to ADF and have a little look at ADF. So ADF is our pipelining orchestration tool. The pipeline that it's going to be 2 pipelines, I guess, that we're going to look at. There is a initial pipeline here that takes our data from landing and loads it specifically into the landing schema in the dedicated pool in Synapse. So we're going to take the data, the files, load them into a tabular structure in Synapse database. So we can run that every day. It'll just load your data into landing. I've got a run of that done already, so I won't run this again. And then what we also have is this one here. This is the Data Vault orchestration. Now, with Vault, you have basically two layers. You've got your raw Vault, which is everything from landing into your hubs, links, and satellites. Excuse me, in our example, once you've loaded raw Vault, you use the data you have in raw Vault, and you build a business vault and you load your data into your business vault. So following that, I've got my raw Vault load at the start, then my business vault load after that. And what this essentially does is it takes a stored procedure name, and the one I've created here literally goes to our control table, pulls in all the ingest procs that IRiS has created. Each ingest proc has an extra bit of metadata attached to it that I've kind of said this ingest proc is for raw Vault, this one is for business vault, and so forth. And then I filter out all the raw Vault ingest procs, pass it to a for each activity. And what that does is it takes each one of those procs, loops through them, and just blasts them out to Synapse, tell them, here's a bunch of them, go execute them in parallel. And it'll just go and load raw Vault for you instantly. Well, depending on how much data you have. And then from there, we filter off the business vault ingest procs, and we load those next. So that's relatively simple. And this is a pipeline that just do raw Vault first, then do business vault. But the magic of this is it's actually driven off really by this early stage stored procedure that tells it what ingest procedures you need. Now imagine at the first thing in the morning, you want, 9 a.m. SLA, and you want to load your whole vault, go ahead, run this, this will load everything. But maybe midday, you have a report that's very exec specific, and you don't need all the tables. You only need maybe 4 or 5. You could now write a stored procedure that specifically gets those 4 or 5, swap it out, and just pass it back through the same process, the same pipeline, and you're using the same pipeline over and over again with different ingest procs. And it makes life easy. And again, patterns, we like patterns. It's a nice, easy pattern to be able to use. So in ADF, what we're going to do is we're going to just hit the trigger now button. This is the stored prop we're doing. I want to load raw Vault and business vault, true, true, true. Go for it, and we'll let this run off, go off and start executing over here in the pipeline runs. So here earlier, I had a run of loading data from our data lake into our landing. Nice green ticks there saying everything's loaded through, nice and easy. And while that's going on, our orchestration of the vault is ticking over. What I thought I might do is very quickly jump across to Purview, because I do want to have a quick look at that.
Yeah.
Purview is Azure's governance tool. It's pretty powerful and definitely becoming more and more popular. What I have here is I have used Purview to scan our Synapse database. And what scanning means is it's just gone through and found all the tables that we've got. I've had to augment that a little bit with some outputs from IRiS to help join some of the tables together. But what that essentially gives us is a nice view of our whole data estate, if you'd like, within Synapse. It gives us a list of all the tables that we have, schemes and so forth. What's quite nice is right here, our customer hub. If I go into that, it gives you some descriptions of where it is, a hierarchy, lots of data. You can assign people to look after it, data governance and stewards and so forth. And what's quite nice is we also have lineage available. Now, this is a high-level lineage. It's table to table, but what we can see is our load table using a stored procedure, loads our stage table, using a vault procedure, loads our hub. And what we're seeing here is our customer hub actually takes data from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different source tables. Part of the power of integration and Data Vault and so forth, you can see where all that comes from. So that's quite handy, quite cool, quite nice.
And people could use third-party governance tools as well, but obviously Purview's now built into the Azure platform as well. So back to that philosophy of if they've got it, let's leverage it. But if you've already invested in a different governance tool, the same thing's possible, right? You just we
it should be.
allow them to scan the database. I mean, obviously there's quite a lot of governance tools now with a scanning function of some sort. We can't comment on which ones are necessarily better than others, but we do what we can to support them with the metadata they need to produce this sort of output.
Absolutely.
But Purview's becoming
Purview's pretty handy. I think the key part as well is that the connectors.
Yeah.
If you're in Azure, Purview already has the connectors to all the other Azure resources. It just makes your life easy.
And it's an incremental addition to your subscription as well. So it's probably more economical to activate another service rather than go buy an enterprise tool. So
and I mean, obviously on our side, we're big on governance. We want to make sure everyone does things right. But of course, you can, as you mentioned, you add this service governance tooling as and when you need it. Grow your Azure real estate. As you're ready and through the maturity curve and so forth.
I think it's important too. Like you need to grow your governance as you grow your warehouse or your data platform, rather than trying to build as an afterthought. Which we used to see lots of people go.
That's it.
I'm going to build my platform and then I'm going to do a governance project. Because definitely we see less of that now. But it is if you're heading down this path, make sure governance is front and center from the start.
No, absolutely right. So the earlier you can kind of start thinking about it, the better. Absolutely. Yeah. What I might do is just quickly come back to, there we go. Okay, so everything's run through. I like to double check things and just see green ticks. Makes me feel good about what I'm doing. Everything's loaded nicely into the vault. And actually, while we're talking about connectors, there is, if I go to how Data Factory connects to other services, is through an internal resource called link service. And these are the link services that I have set up. So I've got a connector to Snowflake at the moment. I've got a connector to Synapse, which is what we kind of use to load the Data Vault. Got a connector here to ADLS, but there are loads. AWS, as you can see there, Salesforce, if that's your thing, there's tons of it. There's always more going in. So, again, pretty handy to use as a ETL tool to import source data in.
I mean, that's why IRiS picks up from landing, right? And we don't bother trying to connect a source because all those connectors are there to use and leverage.
Yeah. Someone's done the work for us already, so no point doing it again.
Well, and that's the thing. I think there are definitely other platforms that put themselves forward, but you end up with a whole bunch of conflicting capabilities or duplicated. We might pay for that duplication.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to, I guess, a load of the vault. So for actually, maybe what I might do very quickly as well, come back to Visual Studio and go to my database. Let's just minimize that. I've got all my vault tables here, all my new vault code and so forth. If I go to let's see, have a quick look at my customer hub. You can see in here, I've got a load of my customer hash key, BKCC, my customer business keys, all in here. Record source of where the data is originated from, what landing table. And then also what I have up at the top here as well, let's show you this one, is this is my vault scheduling table in my control table. One of the control tables even. And in here, as I mentioned, I have a list of the IRiS produced ingest procs, the layer it sits in, RV for raw vault, BV for business vault. And we literally just query this in any magical way you want to produce the ingest procs that you require to populate your dashboards, and gets a list of that, give it to ADF, let the pipeline deal with the rest. Like we saw a moment ago, that'll go away, load everything. And then I also have a log table. Just want to make sure we're logging the runs of everything and keeping an eye on everything that's running through, any failures that are happening, dates and times of when processes were run, quick record count of what's being pushed through tables. Again, pretty handy. You can imagine if you build a Power BI dashboard on top of that, you can have something nice and pretty to look at on a day-to-day basis to keep an eye on things. Yep. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of the demo. But if it's okay, I would like to just finish off with 2 quick slides if I can. So what I'm going to do is very quickly go back to this slide here. And this one is just really a quick summary of where IRiS fits in. You know, at the end of the day, you've got your model, your modeler building out these models using whatever modeling tool they have. We have our data sources using ADF to pull those into landing for us. Then IRiS just takes the model, shoots out some code. You know, we push it through the Azure pipelines, through all the DevOps, you know, fulfilling all the correct DevOps practices, and populate a data vault. Then we use ADF again to schedule and kind of execute our ingest procs to help populate data into our data vault. IRiS sits neatly in the middle there, surrounded by all the Azure resources that you could really want, and it fits in really nicely. On the IRiS side, just to finish off, we're able to model out your standard hubs, your reference hubs. On the link side, we have our standard link, which we demonstrated a moment ago, but we also have the ability to build same as hierarchical links. On the satellite side, again, we saw our standard satellite, but we do dependent child, multi-active. We're able to satellite split and build reference satellites as well.
I think also just wanted to quickly point out too, you ran that Python script when you took the model out of ERD Lab. So yes. I don't think we mentioned, but you know, that script is one of the ones available on the tips and tricks site on the IRiS Knowledge Hub, and we just see that as essentially, you know, as we create scripts that work for different modeling tools, that's where we'll put them. We'll make them available to everyone. So it's not really, we're not trying to create hard integration with or very coupled integration with modeling tools, because we don't need to. But if we do have little assets like that help people to convert their metadata into the IRiS input sort of format, then we're going to make it available. And if you use a modeling tool that, you know, that we haven't come across yet, well, then we can help prepare a script to do that as well. So, you know, it's just trying to make it as easy as possible for IRiS to work with as many tools as possible, without really close coupling and creating dependence.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. And actually, to be totally honest with you, of the Knowledge Hub, the tips and tricks part is my favorite. Yeah. You know, any little problem that we come across with the client on project, you know, and we have to build something slightly different to help them out. It's just a great repository of those little tips, little tricks, little source snippets. You know, you can get in there, pull the code out, make 1 or 2 changes, get it working for yourself. And it's a really nice space to share ideas. So I highly recommend it. And like you say, I've got actually another 1 or 2 bits I want to stick in there. So there are some new ideas coming through, and hopefully it really helps people out.
Perfect. Well, so look, I mean, as you saw today, IRiS is very much a development-focused tool. It's very simple and easy to use. It's not trying to be overtake some of the capabilities that already exist within the Azure tool set. It's really just trying to augment that. And it's, you know, it's a simple license structure and you know, and at a price point that makes it easily affordable for organizations that are heading down this path. So, you know, if you're interested, if you're a Microsoft site, if you're planning on using some of the Microsoft tools, I'd love to talk to you and show you how you can leverage it, and you know, and obviously make it available for a trial and those sorts of things. So, hey, Alex, I think that was a really good demo. Thanks for taking us through all of that.
Oh, thanks for that.
All right. So this is the end of this 2-part series on the Azure tools. We think it's a pretty powerful combination, and you know, and so Azure, IRiS, and Data Vault together, you can achieve a hell of a lot. But we'll be doing other things, as Alex said. We might do some deep dives into other stuff. So if there's something that you'd like to see, then please reach out and let us know. But for now, I think we'll let everyone go. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.